Hey, everybody. I think we're live. Welcome to TLDChat. Hey, you know what? I've been missing you guys after missing a couple days. Well, I guess I only missed really two, so Monday and Wednesday. But welcome to Thursday TLDChat. We're the training, learning, and development community, chatting every morning, 8 a.m. Pacific time, 11 a.m. Eastern time, 4 p.m. Marco time. Hey, Marco, how's it going? Otherwise known as UK time. And yeah, I think those are all the time zones. We're hanging out today. We're going to be talking with Jeff Place in a moment and talking about assessments and all that kind of cool stuff. But there's a couple housekeeping tips I want to go over. There just happens to be another event coming up in January 2018, the TLDC 18 event in Phoenix, Arizona, January 29th and 30th. We are getting together our speakers and we'll be announcing some new ones shortly and getting ready for a great event. So be sure to hit tldc.us and get registered and tell all your friends. And don't forget to sign up for the newsletter when you hit up the website. Luis sends out all sorts of great information about what's going on. We do not intend to cram your inbox in the mornings or at all. We hope to give you just nothing but the information you need from the TLDC community and, you know, things that are going on and things that affect you, right? We talk about our community coming together to talk about the work of training and focusing on not just the theories, but how do we get stuff done? How do we get the work of training done? And whatever that means to you, whether you are a training professional with the title or whether or not you are just trying to build training for some other reason. Maybe you're in a small team, you're a program manager or a product manager, and you know you have to get some training out. And you've just decided, or budgetary reasons, you can't get a hold of training people to do that work for you. You need to get it done. Well, you're welcome here too in the community because we're going to help you get connected with some folks that can help you get the work of training done, at least talk you through how to get it done, because that's really what this is all about, just coming together and chatting and having a good time and commiserating amongst our peers and our colleagues in the community. So hello to everybody in the community. Speaking of y'all, good to see Michelle, good to see Mike, good to see Anthony and Marco, and anybody else who just doesn't happen to be saying hello in the chat. Josh, good to see you too. Hey, as everybody starts popping in, be sure to throw into the chat who you are and maybe who you work for and what you do, so everybody, anybody new popping in, maybe in the middle of the conversation, can scroll back and see who you guys are, and everybody can get together and learn from each other, as we like to do so much. So, you know what? Let's talk assessments. Jeff, how's it going?
It's going really good. Thanks for having me on today.
Yeah, absolutely. It's just been a long time. I think I remember meeting you when I was working at the Guild for the first time.
Yeah, I was going to the Guild shows back when they were at the Renaissance Hotel in downtown San Francisco, and you weren't actually any kind of a room. You were just a table in a hallway.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I think I remember that table.
Yeah.
Luis, I bet Luis remembers that table.
Yep, exactly.
Yeah, it doesn't look like Luis has jumped in yet, but I'm sure he does. Is anybody else having seeing video or not seeing video? I seem to have lost the video, but as long as I can see you, I'm fine with that. So, I mean, as long as I can hear you. So I'm not going to worry about it. Maybe if I refresh. Oh, there it goes. Yeah, it's got to be a bandwidth issue on my end. All right, I'm not going to worry about it. I'm just going to make sure I can see everybody, so I don't have to see myself. So, yeah, so give us a little background. Tell us a little bit about yourself and, how you got here.
Well, so my name is Jeff Place. I've been in the testing and assessment industry for about, 15, 16 years, something like that. I've been in various roles in sales, a little bit of marketing, a little bit of trade show management, a little bit on the consulting side. I've worked for companies that actually deliver the actual exam, test quizzes, surveys. I've actually worked for a company that does proctoring for that. And currently, right now, I work for a company called Cirrus, where we actually deliver where it allows you to author your questions, schedule them, deliver, and then run reports. So I've been in like I said, I've been in the assessment industry for a long time, and I've seen a lot of the changes in how people have kind of taken on and understood why assessments are so important in the learning process. So, yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. So, what if we've got some questions from everybody? Let me throw this out to everyone. Don't forget to jump into the Q&A section. And we've got 4 questions queued up, and I'm going to give you guys a few minutes to vote your favorite question up, and we can hit on that right away. But, one of the things I wanted to ask just right out the chute, and I'm just curious about this myself, is what changes have you seen when it comes to corporate training and assessments?
Well, some of the biggest changes that I've seen is, number one, to just flat out have something that's going to provide a test. That's number one. The second thing that I've seen, because a lot of it, and this kind of goes into one of the questions that I have, isn't just going to a training course enough? And the answer to that question is no. We can get into that later. Mm-hmm. And the next thing that I've seen is there's a lot of, like where, the old Skillsoft or some of the other companies that provide an online course will put like some multiple choice or, yes, no questions at the end, and maybe a 10-question quiz at the end, thinking that that's enough, and realizing, no, that's not. And so you see companies that, depending on how important the test is, realize that they need more than just attendance. They need more than just a passing grade, and they need to see what do their employees know. So you see that progression of realizing how important it is to measure the knowledge and skills. So, yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. So we did get a couple votes in here on the questions, and looks like the one that hit the top first was, what steps can I take to mitigate cheating?
Yeah, so
actually, you know what? Before you jump into that question, let me just do something here, because I'm just looking in the chat, and it looks like we've lost the stream or not being able to see video. So I'm going to hit refresh on my end. And I don't think it will shut down the stream, but I'm just going to give it a shot and see what happens. Hold on 1 second for me.
I see you now.
All right, there we go. Yeah, for some reason my video turned itself off. It's very strange. So, all right, so we're back. So we're good now. At least now I have a chance to remember to click the start answering button too. So,
all right.
All right. So here we go. What steps can I take to mitigate cheating?
All right. Well, so before I launch into talking about mitigating the cheating, I think it's always good to understand why people are cheating. And what it really comes down to is there's 3 reasons why people are cheating. And number one is they're rationalizing it, right? It's just like, well, I'm taking this Microsoft test and they've got so much money, so they won't care if just I cheat. Or maybe the opportunity arises. It's like, whoa, wait a sec, there's the answers over there. Or somebody has slipped me the answers, before I walk into my test. And lastly, they're motivated. So the higher the stakes of the assessment, they're motivated to. So if it means if I don't pass this test, I lose my job or I don't get this raise, that's a tremendous motivation. So when we're looking at assessments, some of the reasons why they're cheating, and a lot of it comes down to that motivation factor. I'm motivated because this is going to affect my life or my livelihood and quite possibly my limbs. I mean, if I don't know how to run this machine, I could get my arm cut off. And it'll seem a little bit extreme, but that is the reality. So the reasons why people cheat come down to rationalization, opportunity, and motivation. Now, so when you're and the threats that you're guarding against are content theft, because the more that your questions get out, then everybody passes. And then what have you learned from that? Okay. And plus, for some people, when their questions get out, that could be thousands and even millions of dollars that people have lost. Okay. You're also dealing against, just the flat out cheating and then impersonation. So I've got to take this test, but I get Brent to go ahead and do it for me. What does that learn? Okay. So steps that you can take. So now we understand why people are cheating and how do they do it. So let's understand what kind of steps can you do to mitigate cheating. Okay. So some of the first things that you can do are when you get into creating the test is having a randomization capability. So you're shuffling your choices, you're randomly selecting your questions from a pool. So just to have 10 questions at the end of a test, you're making it way easy for people to start cheating. So the more questions that you have in a pool of questions to choose from, the less likely anybody that would be sitting next to me would have any of the same questions. So you're shuffling the choices, you're randomly selecting your questions, and then you're randomizing the order in which they all appear. Some people say, hey, wait a sec, everybody's got to have the same test. Well, maybe you take out the second one, you can still shuffle the choices, and you can still randomize the order in which they all appear. Still the same test. Now, some other things that you can do. For instance, you can get into having a secure browser. So a secure browser allows you to lock down the computer so you can't print, you can't browse the internet, and you can't change applications. That's not the end-all solution, because if I'm taking my test at home, then I can just pull out my camera phone, right, and just take a picture of the screen, right? So those are things that are going to kind of slow some of the cheaters down. But the question that you got to ask when you're looking to mitigate cheating is, how important is our test, right? And so the more important that it is, the more security measures that you're going to take into it. So you're scheduling, the more security measures that you're going to take. Some other things that you can do, or how do you schedule it? Is it just an open thing, or are you going to set it for a certain time period? So once you get past some of those initial things like randomization, the scheduling, the secure browser, then you start looking at, okay, well, this is a really important test because we're qualifying this person or we're certifying this person. Now, are we going to have people in a room to ask to have them take the test? And then you start getting into adding more people into it, and which obviously costs a little bit more money, but depending on what you can do. There's a couple of things. I'm going to share my screen here really quick, and I'm going to let me see if I can get this to work right. I saw it.
Oh, do you have the ability to share your screen? I didn't
think. Well, wait a sec. No, that didn't work. I thought I had the ability to share my screen right here. Let's see this. All right, can you all see my screen?
Oh, fantastic. That must be a new upgrade.
All right. So what I'd like to do actually is I'm not getting into like a demonstration mode, but what I'm just going to illustrate my point here is that, can you all see this screen where it says Cirrus and delivering right in the middle?
Yep.
Okay, so one of the things that I'm going to highlight here is, let's say that I'm going to have a group of 10 people or 30 people, however many that it is. Now, one of the features that you could look for in software is what we call invigilator, or you might call it a proctor, a monitor, somebody that's in the room. Now, in this situation, this person can't see the screens of everybody, but they're in the room, okay? And so here I'm going to, let's flip back to this browser, and I'm going to log in to actually take a test. So I'm going to, for right now, I'll be switching browsers so you know that I'm in this browser, I'm the test taker. In the next browser, I'm the invigilator. And you'll see what I mean when we get going. So I'm going to log in to start taking this test. Put my username and password in. And then I'm going to just take this EATP invigilator test. So I'm going to click Start Test. And we'll get into, that I get my information about what this test is about and duration. We start it. Some things that you can do when you're, some other things that you can do to mitigate cheating is having your questions 1 question per page, okay? You're putting a timer on it up at the top, okay? Here you see you got graphics and all that. I'm going to go ahead and click and answer just a couple of questions, okay? Some things that you can do, you notice at the bottom it's got previous and next. You can make it so that you can't go back to answer the question. Those are, fun things that you can do to your people. So I've answered a couple of questions. I can see how much I've got left and what to do, things like that. Now, I'm in the test as a test taker now. I'm going to bring up that invigilator role again. And so this is the person right here. You see I'm logged in here as Atticus Place. Now I am acting as the invigilator, or in other words, proctor. So the scenario that I'm kind of having you picture is Atticus is the proctor that's in a room of 10 people, let's say, and I was one of the test takers in the room. So as Atticus clicks on this button here, he is now able to see a snapshot of what's going on. That there's one candidate taking the test that you see. It's in progress. It's not handed in. And there's an hour and 11 minutes left, okay? What kind of things you do to mitigate cheating here is that this invigilator can take actions like he can pause the exam. So if I'm looking out as Atticus, I'm looking over and I see Jeff over there looking at somebody else's test, they can pause the test or even void the exam. Other things that they can do is let's go ahead and click on this person, and then you can see, well, he opened up the welcome screen. And then look at how fast I was answering these questions. So other things that you can do is how long were they taking to answer the questions? If it's a 100-question quiz and he's blowing through it in 15 minutes, you got problems there. So you're looking at how are they handing in the questions? How long are they taking to answer the questions? And then while I'm at it, I could have that invigilator person go back and stop the test, as you see, pause it. If I want to go ask him a question, I can give him extra time, or I could actually just void out the test. Okay. So given that, those are some fun things that you can do to mitigate some of the cheating. I'm going to stop the sharing screen and go back to our here and answer one last point about that. Is that so that is a situation where I've got somebody that can be in a room with people, and then I can stop the test, pause it, things like that. If you want to get into some more, like the tests that you're taking are really high stakes, where you're qualifying somebody for a specific job, or you want to get into more certification, then you can get into a company like ProctorU or Proctorio. Or ProctorU is that you'll schedule your exam, you'll connect to a proctor. So think of I'm the test taker and Brent is the proctor. And Brent is going to go through some security checks to make sure that I am who I say that I am. And you're going to take, see how I've got this video that's going on, right? That Brent will ask me to pick up my laptop and put it around the room to get a 360-degree panorama, and then see all of the things that that's happening in the room. They're also trained on the video. Like Brent would be watching my eyes. So if I'm constantly going like this, right? He's looking at, that's an easy one to look for. Or if I'm constantly going like this with the eye movement. And then,
Interesting.
so ProctorU, that's getting into a live proctoring. A company like Proctorio is looking at where it's a record and professional review. So you record it and somebody can watch it later. Then the last step would be, if you really want to spend the money, you could get into a brick and mortar like a Pearson or a ProMaster.
That's very, very cool stuff. It reminds me a lot of being necessary for certification type stuff, right? If you're going to be getting your Microsoft certification or your Cisco networking certification or something like that, the MCSE. And all those really, really advanced certifications that the proctoring and the quizzing and the testing, it needs all of these things in place. Is it a bit overkill for a lot of people though? For a lot of companies?
Well, that's the question you got to ask: is how important is this test? So if I've got an employee that wants to take their A+ certification through CompTIA, then it's not. But if this is just, I need my sales rep to be able to be qualified to be able to go out on the sales floor, or something like that. Like if you're at a Staples employee, and I need him to be able to be qualified to sell this fax machine or this printer or whatever, then it would probably be a little overkill. But it goes back to the question: how important is this test? The more important, the more that affects the life and livelihood and limb of the employee, the more steps you're going to take.
Wouldn't so obviously the company's going to take those steps, but wouldn't also the employee want to take those steps too, so they don't? I mean, I don't know. I guess some people really don't,
Well, let's put it this way. Let's go back to the reasons why people cheat. If I'm motivated because I'm going to get a job, I'm going to keep my job, or I'm going to get a raise, then I don't want those barriers in front of me. I want it to I want to be able to pass this test as easy as possible. I don't want those barriers. So nobody is going to come out and say, you know what, you need to put the secure browser on me because I'm going to cheat. Well, it's kind of a silly example, but it's like, if I was or if you had a pregnant mom that wanted to test out antidepressant drugs to see if they actually work while she's pregnant, you know what I mean? You don't want those barriers in front of you.
So let's hit one of these other questions here real quick before we hit that half-hour mark. So how can assessments strengthen the learning process?
So let's kind of take a look at, kind of a silly or a funny example that I have is, my wife sends me on honey-do lists all the time. And the number one probably is to go to the grocery store. And the example that I'm giving is what I've tried to tell her is, all right, anything more than 3 items, I got to write it down because I will forget. And the older I get, the smaller that list becomes. And I think I'm down to like 2. Anything more than 2 items, I got to write it down, right? You're sending me to a training course for an 8-hour or 6-hour or a couple days, by the end of the course, I've got so much information, all right? And I'm learning. But what is it that's all that learning that goes on? I'm not saying everybody's going to forget everything, but the idea that happens is the more that you learn, the more you think you're getting it, but then life happens, you get back to your desk and it's like, oh yeah, I remember some key points and I might have taken notes, but how does that really translate? So sometimes think of, and I'm not saying there's all training programs are bad or anything. You got some great ones that are awesome. But if you don't have anything that's strengthening the memory recall, a lot of that learning is kind of like, I'm going to go back to the library and I'm going to return my book, but I'm just going to open up the door and throw the book in. So the more that you can do to strengthen the memory recall, it's in essence better indexing how your brain stores that information. So instead of just like throwing the book in and thinking, oh, well, I could just walk in and find it somewhere, right? And it's like, now you're like trying to figure out, oh, what did I learn? What did I learn? So the more that you're asking questions, and the idea behind the asking questions is that you are, number one, that you're practicing a memory retrieval practice, right? So you're creating intrigue as you're going into the training program. And plus, administrators kind of find out, well, how much do they know before they go into it?
So
now, the more that you learn, right, you're asking questions through that process to create an experience. So the more that you learn, you ask a question, and they know they got to retrieve that information. You're indexing the information better within your brain, and ultimately what it does is reduce.
Right, I was just going to say, curve. So how does this connect to that whole forgetting curve concept and the spaced repetition idea? Because when I hear you explain the assessments from this perspective, from this application, right? And what you're saying about, one-off, training, a full day, an hour even, where you're getting a lot of information, or maybe it's a whole week of training. And then there's a test afterwards that forces you to recall, whatever you can recall at the end of that test. I think that does strengthen that learning process, but still that test only happens once and then you leave. And so the forgetting curve is still in play.
Oh, but here's the thing though, is that it not only is it in play, but you probably go through the course and you might, pass that test, but as soon as you're done and you get back into live, the forgetting curve really takes a dip. So what you're doing is you're asking a pre-course test, which in other words, like a diagnostic test. Let's find out how much do they know. Now you're into the test, you're into the learning program. And you're doing more formative style of what we call. So those are like your quizzes and little knowledge checks. And those can be added in where it might be an iframe that's, here's 5 questions, right into the online course, right? Or maybe you give them a piece of paper or something like that. Or maybe, as you're doing, depending on the type of course that it is, that they have their, a phone or a tablet, and they scan a QR code, which brings up a little knowledge check quiz. So they're going to different stations, and boom, scan this code, take this quiz while you're at here to see if you learned what we're talking about here, right? And so by the time they get to the test, not only are they better prepared, but everything that, as much as possible is stuck in their brain, indexed properly so that they take their test, they pass it, and then you have post-course tests to make sure that you understand how much did they learn. It's because what is the key about that training course? Number one, the company wants you to produce better results. They want better employees, but they're also spending a lot of money. So let's make sure that what we're spending this money on is worth it. It sounds like
so what I was thinking before. So so when you're talking about, a course having some content and a quiz and some content and a quiz and content and a quiz, you're talking about self-paced, right? And so there's elements of that stretched out. And I think it speaks to the idea of this being more of a design issue too, right? Instead of designing a course or an experience that is all the content and then a test, what we're saying is give them a little bit of content, right? The 3 things on your grocery list, right now, and then kind of quiz them on it, help them to, learn how to retrieve it and recall it. Then give them a few more little bits, nuggets, maybe tell a little story, and then give another test. And then maybe at the end, do one larger assessment and see if they can recall all of it. And stretch out that process to support more of the learning process and not have it be just all training, all assessment, done.
Exactly. I mean, the thing is that, there's a lot of different ways and I don't want to get into theory about how people learn because that is, that's a whole nother discussion. My point is that you've got some whatever way that you have learned, whether if it's you look at the 70-20-10 rule where 70% of what you learn is based on your own experience, and then that what people have taught you, and then things like that on your lecture and mode and all that. Whatever it is that your learning methodology is, you combine it with learning, experience, and knowledge check, right? Learning, experience, and knowledge, checking that, measuring it. And that way your brain has a chance to index it better and be able to retain that information so that ultimately when that training course is done, you're a more effective employee.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
There's somebody put in here, somebody's laughing at that I throw out QR codes and put out beacons. I totally agree with you. However it is that you bring up a test, an iframe, a QR code, a beacon, whatever it is that you do to make it easy for them, and you're seeing how they're performing, I totally agree with you. So tons of different ways that you could bring up quizzes and knowledge checks and stuff like that.
To have beacons, Anthony, I'm talking at you, buddy. If beacons instead of just being used, in geofencing, instead of just using that technology to throw up advertising, right? What if you could use that same technology for spaced repetition, right? I mean, an employee is in a particular app, they're in a particular location, and maybe they get a notification that says, answer these quick 3 questions because we know you just took a course on this piece of machinery that's in this location, and test your memory or whatever, and be able to just sprinkle those assessments based on where you're located to help kind of force people to continue to recall that information over time. I mean, I don't even know if that would be worth even investigating the value of, but it seems like it might be an interesting thing to try.
So somebody put up there about, before you get to turn on the keys of the Caterpillar backloader, that's a great example. And for a customer that I worked with, we set up this training program with them where they worked with the learning providers. I didn't get involved with that, but the whole concept was setting up a pre-course test before they go into the training. While they're in there, there's knowledge check quizzes that are happening. They got to take their certification test, and then at the end, they got to take their observation test. So Brent would be observing me and going through the checklist to see that I can do all of those things. Those are all different methodologies of using your assessment program for its fullest extent. And then you can go back and ultimately what you're doing is making it so that you are legally defensible at the end. Something goes wrong.
I guess that's also where the XAPI data comes in for all those little tiny moments where you learn to be able to save all that data somewhere where it can be retrieved, right? And collected and added to somebody's profile and whatnot. But I just wanted to extend the conversation a little bit just on this idea of making the quizzes kind of an entry point for doing the work. I think that's a fantastic idea, whether it's the Caterpillar backloader or any other, significant, piece of equipment. And who knows what the trigger would be. Maybe before you're allowed to even click the start button, there's something that asks you to log in and it checks to see, and it throws up a couple questions and maybe whether or not you actually answer those questions correctly or not. Maybe it's just the fact that you observed them, you attempted to answer them was really all they wanted to do for that day, because maybe you're an experienced driver, but they just want to get some information in front of you before you start your day. Right. And I think there's still value in that. I think it's a fantastic example, putting that really puts learning into the workflow, right? We talk about this all the time where it's part of what you do every single day. But hey, before you start your day, we can tell people take 10 minutes to consume some content. But in this case, you're saying, hey, you know what? We're just not going to let you start your day until you take a few minutes to learn something new that we've put in front of you. And now you can start your day.
Right. And let's see if you actually learned it. So some of the things that, and the ideas I'm trying to relay, kind of package them all together, and that strengthening the learning process is that in your example, Brent, that you just talked about is you take a couple of questions and you may not get any of them right, but that's key right there is now we're finding the problems early. Well, why is everybody getting those questions wrong? And having a proper testing tool that's not just pass fail is helping you understand, well, wait a sec, are these poorly written questions or do these people really not know what this means?
Right.
And we thought we trained them. So you're finding the problems early. By finding the problems early, you're reducing human error. So if you're going to get on that backhoe, and it's like, why do people keep running into this building? You know? It's like, okay, well then let's reduce that. Let's get people to stop running into the building. You know what I mean? And by doing all those things, not only are you documenting the understanding that it's all documentation. It's all that we have something that's defending us. So, and in the long run, by finding the problems early, you're reducing the error, you're demonstrating the commitment, you're documenting the training. And ultimately what's happening is that for the organization, they're reducing costs. So it's less time. You have an accident on the job, suddenly the plant shuts down, or this shuts down. We can't work. We're not producing. Or if our sales guys don't know how to sell this drug, we can't be in front of people and we're not selling, which means we're not making money. So ultimately, learning has to be there. But measuring what they learned is where you're really going to understand: are we reducing costs, and are we backing ourselves up to be legally defensible?
It's fantastic. And if anybody knows the CLO at Caterpillar, let's all approach him together and pitch him the idea and see if Anthony can make some beacons for them, and we can work this whole thing out. I think it's a great idea. Let me think.
Right. If somebody put down on the bottom that Mike did, what are we trying to accomplish here? And so that's your end goal and your objective. So if you have your objective as, what are we trying to accomplish by sending people to this training course to get qualified people? We want to document learning. And we want to know, because you'd be amazed how many conversations I have where people say, you know, we send them to these courses or we do these little trainings, but honestly, I really don't know how much they know. And so by having that ability to be able to take people to a training course, be able to give them, quizzes and a test at the end and all that kind of stuff, but most importantly, through the learning process, that you have some sort of what we call a score report at the end, where you may not show them how they scored on each individual question, because that's the summative test or the end of course test. You would on your quizzes show them how they did, but at your summative style, the end of course test, things like that, where we're going to qualify them, that you could show how they scored on the learning objectives. So not only is our assessments helping you through the learning process, as far as the training and memory recall and memory retrieval and all that kind of stuff, but now let's understand how are they scoring in the objectives that we're testing them on. So an easy example would be, we're going to test people on Microsoft Office. So how they did on PowerPoint, Word, and Excel. And so if somebody missed it, they might have passed it, but how do you know? They might have passed the test, but how do you know that they're not that great at Excel? They don't know they don't even some of the basic understandings of how do I tabulate or calculate all the score or the amounts at the end, things like that. So what you're doing is you're understanding, okay, here's how you scored. So so there was 10 questions. You needed to get a 70% in this particular learning objective. Here's how you scored, but then also for them to understand, here's the maximum that somebody got to take it, here's the average, and here's the minimum, and here's you. Here's where you stand compared. So not only are they understanding where the strengths and weaknesses are, but where do they stand with the rest of the people that are taking this exam?
Fantastic. That's exactly the kind of stuff we're always thinking about. Hey, let me take my late 30-minute break. I'm going to start calling it my 40-minute break, just so. Although it'll turn into the 50-minute break then, so that might be a little bit strange. But keep chatting with the folks in the chat. Get yourself a drink if you need to, and I'll be right back to you. I'm going to click focus here and just be sure to remind everybody. First of all, just to say thank you to everybody for hanging out with us. I know all of you are busy working professionals, getting your work done. Always appreciate you guys jumping in and hanging out with us, and TLD chat. If what we're giving to you every single day is of value to you, feel free to leave a couple tips and a couple bucks in the tip jar for us. We are always grateful for those of you that have thrown us a few bucks here and there. And, believe it or not, it actually does really help. And it gives us, a little extra motivation to realize, that what we're doing is if you want us to keep going, then we're here for you. We'll do it anyways, just because it's fun. But we'd like to kick it up a notch. So all the donations and contributions help a lot. And for the folks that hang out with us and that help us produce the show with notes, Craig's not here today, but he helps us take notes and get those collected up on the website, and we appreciate that. And Kara, who I met for the first time this week, well, actually in person at the Learning Dev Camp event, which was fantastic. Always fun to finally meet people in person for a nice big hug. So that was fun. And also met a lot of new folks that did not know that we did TLD chat every morning. So hopefully we'll get a few people, a few noobs joining us and hanging out and becoming part of the TLDC community. So lots and lots of fun there to be had. But again, hey, listen, TLDC 18 coming up. Check it out. Hit up the website. You can go to tldc.us to get there, or you can go to tldc18.com and check out the website there and get all the information you need on the event. Get yourself registered. We are going to cap the event at 100 attendees. And so we are asking everybody to jump in and get signed up. We do this on purpose. We think TLDC 16 was a perfect sized crowd, and I think getting too much larger will reduce what made TLDC 16 really special, and we want to continue that. It was lots of great value, I think, came out of that event, and we're going to be adding some new things, trying some new things out, but also we're still going to be giving you the same great value that you got at the last event. And so if you did not go to TLDC 16 and you're curious what the heck is all this about, please feel free to reach out to some of the folks in the chat that were there, or to us directly, either to Luis or myself, and we will get you hooked up with some of the community, and they can tell you all about it and help you make that decision. I know there's a lot of events going on out there, and you've got limited budget and limited things to do. And so, we appreciate that and understand everybody has a different need, and they're at a different points in their career. And so what we try to do at TLDC is help everybody at any point in your career. So we have people that have been CLOs for a long time, that have worked their way up, have been in the industry a long time, that will be at the event. And we've got noobs who show up to the event, and everybody in between, people that work in the vendor space, folks that are consultants and enterprise and small and medium-sized businesses, working in those spaces as well. And the thing that I love the most about the event is just being able to make those connections for people. So I don't want anybody to walk away from any TLDC event feeling like they didn't get what they needed and get the work done. I really, really do, feel a great sense of responsibility if you're going to take time out of your life to come hang out with us for a couple days. And engage. I want to make sure that you get all the value that you're looking for, get your questions answered. If you're struggling with a particular strategy or tactic at your job, it doesn't matter what it is, whether it's a, internal politics thing you're trying to wade through, whether it's a budgeting thing, getting a seat at the table. Maybe it's what kind of authoring tool should you be using, or maybe no authoring tool at all. You're trying to get into video and you want to understand how to do video, all of that. We will cover it. And if we don't cover it, I will connect you with the people who do and make sure that you at least have a path to getting the answers that you need. So you can rest assured that I will make sure that you get value from the event in that fashion. So anyways, just wanted to get that out there today, especially since I've missed a couple of days. I don't feel like I've talked about it enough lately. So again, I'm super excited about it. Actually, just being at Learning Dev Camp really kind of refired me up about events and why why getting people together face to face is so important. So definitely re-energized and ready to get that kicked off and cranked up again, full steam ahead. So with that, I think I've covered all of the good stuff. TLD chat, TLD community, and TLD conference, TLD 18. And if I missed anything, I'm sorry. Somebody put it in the chat and I'll try to cover it at the end. So we'll come back to Jeff and talk a little bit more about assessments. Did you see anything in the chat room that we might have missed or anything that we could cover?
Josh, I'll have to get with you about where to eat in LA next week. I got a couple of resources. I got a couple of places that I remember that I wrote down in my notes, and I will definitely get that out to you.
Are you based in LA?
No, I'm based in
that's right.
Salt Lake City, Utah.
Okay.
Yes, I'm based in Salt Lake City, Utah. But there was a while there where I was like a traveling hound, like some of you out there, and we're all over the place. And I personally myself, I don't. It's like I feel like I'm a failure if I just eat at the hotel, a restaurant or something like that. I go to these great places or fun areas, and I don't need to travel 2 hours to get to someplace to find something to eat. But there's always great places if you just take a moment. And Josh is a foodie also, so high five out to you for being a foodie as well.
I'm a meat and potatoes guy, not a foodie. You just put some basic food in front of me and I'll eat it. I try not to put too much heart into it.
Yeah, but the thing is that if I got to be away from my family, I got to be out in this, maybe a strange area or, it might be a boring area and everything. But the point is I can at least get something good to eat. So meat and potatoes is great, but meat and potatoes at this place might not be as good as this place.
Yeah, it's perfect. Perfect. All right. So, so we got you hooked up on the food front, guys. If you need to know where to eat, Jeff's your man. Get you dialed in. Now, do you test people first on where the best food is?
Josh has asked me in the past about where to go to eat, and I never give out a recommendation unless I specifically state I've heard this, but most of the time, 99% of the time, it's because I've been there. And so, and there's a lot of times, like if somebody says, hey, or I find out, hey, I'm going to Chicago, sometimes the first thing that comes to mind is, I got to eat at the Purple Pig, or something like that. Or if I'm going to, Biloxi, Mississippi, I'm thinking, I'm going to the Shed Barbecue, or, all kinds of things like that. So I have some places in mind that I really love going to, for some great food eats and stuff like that. But obviously you're there to, do your business and everything. But you still have a great time. How do you
distinguish between like the places that just have better marketing, right? That are the real commercial places. You do the Google search to best places to eat, or you Yelp it, and you end up with the chain restaurant that pops up. How do you find the sort of off the grid type stuff that's just really awesome?
Okay, well, you know what? A lot of it has to do with the locals. So, quick story. I remember going to, we were in Starkville, Mississippi, which is where Mississippi State is. And we were talking with Mississippi State. And I just happened to say, it was at the end of the meeting, great times. We go over your action items. And I said, hey, by the way, we don't want to take any more of your time. And plus, we've got a couple of barbecue places to hit. And that just like everybody in the room lit up and said, I don't care where you think you're going. You need to go to Little Dewey's, which is like 2 blocks over. And I was like, what are you talking about? So it is a lot about asking the locals. And that, number one, you get a good place. And number two, you probably build a better relationship of trust because you're not talking about business only with your customers. So locals is one thing. And then going off of people that you might trust, it's so much about locals. And then you've been back there a time or two, you've tried it yourself, and then it's like, all right, well, I tried that place. It was okay. Or man, that was phenomenal. I'm going back to Little Dewey for sure. And on that particular one, just so that you know, I did that that was the first, we had like about 4 or 5 visits with different companies on that particular trip. It was about a 3-day trip. We ended up going to like 9 barbecue places in those 3 or 4 days because of recommendations that people told us that were different than what we thought we needed to do. And true story, the guy that I was traveling with, my colleague at that company, after hitting 9 barbecue places in like 4 days, he went vegan a month later. And
I don't know if that's a positive thing or
I think I
thing.
fell off the barbecue wagon for about a week and a half, and then I was right back on.
That's awesome. Hey, so I just have to point this out. What you just explained, I mean, granted, we were talking food, right? And trying to figure out where to eat. But what you just explained was, in my mind, the learning process, right? I mean, in general, this is everybody's learning process. And we talk about it all the time in other terms, but you just described it as, and to me, it's exactly the same thing, right? What's the first thing you said, right? Ask the people that are there, ask the locals. Isn't that the same as talk to the subject matter experts? That's what everybody exactly wants first, right? It's like, I don't want to sit through a course. I have just formulated some questions in my mind, and I'd like to start there. So tell me who I should talk to get those questions answered. And then it's go try it, right? So we're doing trial and error, and it's like, did it work? Did it not work? Did you like the food? Did you not like the food, right? And then you go to the people that maybe aren't subject matter experts, but that you trust, right? That are other folks that you go to, and you get more information. And so you kind of on your own, you aggregate the answers and the information that you need, bring it all together, right? And then you start to answer questions. And then at some point you either say to yourself, I've gotten enough, right? I've been to 9 barbecues now, and I've now consumed enough of this content to know I'm going to go vegan for a while. Or in other terms, you've consumed enough of the content to feel confident that your questions were answered and you don't need any more. Or, you've eaten all that barbecue and you say to yourself, what I'd really love to do is know how to cook that barbecue. So I want to go to the local place near me, or even come back here and do a class, right? Do an actual class where I have an instructor that teaches me and walks me and guides me through a process to becoming an expert in making the barbecue, right? I mean, the whole model, I think, matches perfectly with what we talk about every single day.
Well, what you're describing is, I totally agree with everything you're saying. That you're going from, learner to intermediate to master to guru, and then finally you're a Jedi. And then I've got friends that I go to barbecue places with that are so good at it that sometimes they ruin the experience when we go to a barbecue restaurant, because they're like, they did this wrong, or they did this, or they should have charted it this way, or whatever it is. And that's when you know that you are a Jedi.
But there's actually a term for that too. They call it the curse of knowledge, right? Where you forget what it's like to be a newbie. You forget what it's like to have that initial experience and what somebody new to the experience needs to go through. And that's why we get that curse of knowledge with somebody that's at that Jedi level. They sometimes forget what it was like when they were back in the early stages. And so they want you, right? In my experience, I would translate it into this. I go to the Jedi subject matter expert to get the content for the training I need to create. And they want me to put in everything in the kitchen sink into this course, because they want to give everybody everything that's in their head. And you have to say, wait, no, time out. That's too much for a newbie, and you can't jump right into this topic. We got to ease them into it a little bit and just give them this bit and then let them practice a little bit, those types of things. But
right. And then, so you're getting into the learning experience, learn experience. You get to the point where finally the key to know that probably somebody thinks they're a Jedi barbecue guy in this example is they make the comment, I could have made this better at home. You hear that, you're like, okay, got it. All right.
I'm the man. I think, Luis, we're speaking your language, bud, right? He's a master barbecuer. I must say, I have not experienced it yet, but I must say, just by looking at his posts on Facebook of his barbecue, I get really hungry every time I see one, and I want to fly out to California and have Luis's barbecue. So Luis, I might have to have you over to the house when we're at TLDC 18, and maybe you can barbecue for us. Maybe that's what we'll do, Luis. Maybe the day before we'll do a special barbecue event, and you can cook up your favorite. Anthony, are we making you hungry? No, this has been fun, Jeff. I really appreciate you hanging out with us today. It's a good time. Yeah. So what's next on your agenda? You off to any events, or what's going on?
So I've got another trade show that's coming up in New Orleans. It's the Institute of Credentialing Excellence. So you know, the learning and training and learning shows, and all the shows that you have out there about learning and development, they're all great and fun and everything like that. And people are really into, helping each other out and everything. That's funny. You go to some of the testing and assessment shows where those are people that they're at an association level, and where the test is the king. You don't have your test questions, then you don't have a product. And you don't have a product, you don't have an association, right? And so those are, you want to talk about getting into like people that are, looking at numbers and everything like that. Those are fun conversations. Those are really fun, where you got people that are wearing a lot of bow ties and they're looking at numbers, So I read up on my reliability and validity and how is this a good question, bad question, item analysis and things like that a lot, so I can at least sound intelligent.
What? I wanted to ask you about that, but we're running out of time, so maybe we'll have you on again, and I'd love to talk about that kind of stuff. Just like, how do you write a good test question, all that kind of stuff, because I know everybody has to write them, right? Whether they're using a full-blown assessment tool like what you have, or whether they're just adding a little quiz inside of their Articulate course or whatever, how to write it correctly and how to ask a good question, I think is an art. It's a skill that I think people need to learn, and I don't think we really talk about it enough. I think there's more often than not, it's the conversations, at least I've heard lately, are, it's, multiple choice questions don't work and blah, 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 and we should just not have them. And I'm thinking, well, I don't know. I don't want to go to that extreme. I think there's a valid, when they're done correctly, like everything else, right? When applied in the right fashion, I think they can be incredibly powerful.
Oh, I totally agree with you. And it is a total art form, believe it or not. And there are some types of there are rules that if you really want to get into it, like not having a double negative in your question. Is your text that you're adding, the STEM text, as we call our stimulus, too long? Yeah. Things like that. There's lots of things that we could talk about, and I full on agree with you that we could get into. Yeah, so awesome. I'd love to come back, and we talked about barbecue on this one.
That sounds good. That sounds good. All right. Well, I'm gonna close your video window, but you'll still be here, and I'm just gonna do some closing remarks, and you can chat with everybody in the chat real quick. And but definitely we'll get with you, and we'll get you on the calendar again. How about that? All right.
That sounds great. Thanks, guys. I really appreciate you having me on board today. Take care, Jeff. We'll talk to you later.
All right, everybody. Hey, I hope you had a good time today on Thursday's TLD Chat. Great conversation. Look at this. I'm at a minute ahead of schedule, so I can ramble for at least 2 then, so I can end at 8:02. But hey, listen, it's 9 o'clock already. But anyways, Brett, I forgot to do at least one sound effect. I haven't had my sound machine with me all week. So anyways, we'll get Sam back on here soon enough to get us make us a little song. Yeah, I just love that. You just got to take that away from me sometimes. But anyways, hey, listen, TLDC 18, sign up, get registered, tell all your friends, hit the share button, tell people that we hang out here every single day, 8 a.m. Pacific time, 11 a.m. Eastern time, 4 p.m. European time, or I think Marco time is going to stick, Marco. I like that. So we'll we'll keep it. Or anybody else that joins us from the UK. It's always good to have multi-country representation. So It's much appreciated, and always love to hear the different perspectives. I saw early in the conversation Marco was talking about the difference between the U.S. and the U.K. and how he kind of saw the difference between us utilizing proctors more than what he's experienced in the UK. I think those types of conversations are really interesting for us to really understand the different areas and why, you know, the different ways that different cultures, I guess, if you will, are address similar issues. So good time. That's why we all hang out here. It's why we come here every single day to share our knowledge and the things we know, and to hang out with colleagues and get better at the work of training, learning, and development. I hope everybody had a great day. We will see you tomorrow. Tomorrow is Video Friday, and I can't even tell you how psyched I was all week just knowing that Video Friday was coming up. I don't even think we have a guest for it, but it's going to be awesome anyways. If for no other reason than it's just Video Friday, and it just is awesome. So we will see you all tomorrow. Everybody have a great day. Talk to you later.